We all love Pixar, right? They're the most important and influential digital animation studio on the planet. They've given us fantastic movies like Monsters Inc., A Bug's Life, Finding Nemo, Up, The Incredibles, Ratatouille, and Toy Story. A handful of these films have been turned into massive revenue generating franchises. In addition to making oodles of money, they've forced other animation studios to step up their own game. Disney, who coincidentally owns Pixar, has even started making their own digital films with great flicks like Big Hero 6, Frozen, Wreck-It Ralph, and Zootopia. This has made it really tough to tell which movie is coming from where and saturated the market to the point where the quality of these stories is deteriorating a bit. Does that mean that the mouse is churning out crap every time it animates a film? No, of course not. But too much of a good thing inevitably becomes a bad thing. The current state of the Star Wars saga can attest to that. With a few exceptions, Pixar has released one movie per year since the late 90s, and I reviewed Soul in 2020. That was Pixar at their creative finest, and a great example of the studio flexing their best storytelling muscles. Cue to 2021, and along comes Luca, the latest Pixar film to embrace all of the things that make Pixar movies, well, Pixar movies. Thank you so much for checking out the video. Before we get started, click on that red subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you know whenever I post a new piece of content. Luca provides the viewer with a rather interesting introduction to its main character. A scaly water monster, Luca spends his days corralling up fish and hanging out with his rather overprotecting scaly water monster parents. While this wouldn't be out of the ordinary for any other animated film, Luca and his parents have Italian accents, which had me genuinely confused in the first 15 minutes or so, because I never watched a trailer for this movie. This makes a little bit of sense when Luca finds himself accidentally brought to the surface by Alberto, another scaly water monster who lives on land and occasionally visits a nearby Italian town. This particular setting of the movie is a clear choice of director Enrico Casarosa, but apart from a few jokes about eating pasta with your hands, it doesn't actually, do all that much. The big premise of the film is that when any of these water dwellers are dried off, they turn into actual humans. It's an interesting plot device and one that creates its own share of tension and humor. It's also given literally zero explanation whatsoever. So there are humans, and there are water creatures that turn into humans. The moral takeaway at the end of the film is centered around this very premise, and yet the reason for it is utterly non-existent. Not a single piece of dialogue offers any insight into how or why these differences exist. The movie has decent world building, but offering no justification for this is a strange decision to make. The friendship between Luca and Alberto is the core focus of the story and easily the best part of the film. This is the kind of stuff that Pixar has always done really well, and that continues here. Luca's cautious attitude and Alberto's carefree spirit combine to form a great friendship. Apart from the central story, everything that surrounds Luca is simply rehashed from better films. If there's a story trope that's been used in a movie, Luca is delighted to repeat it here. Overbearing parents who must learn to let go and allow their child to forge their own path forward? Check. Lucky third wheel character that contributes very little except for helping move the plot along? Yup. A big, scary, intimidating character that turns out to have a heart of gold? Baby, you know it. Luca's certainly an entertaining enough movie, but it has the problem that a lot of Disney content has right now. It's utterly forgettable. The absolute glut of remakes, reboots, sequels, and prequels that the mouse spits out have started to slowly overshadow whatever small bits of good storytelling exist in their various forms of media. The 2019 Lion King remake was forgettable. The Star Wars sequel trilogy was forgettable and insulting, and Luca is fine while also forgettable. The strongest of Disney's efforts have been put into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but even that has had its share of flawed entries. Their acquisition of 20th Century Fox and inevitable reintroduction of the X-Men will ultimately determine how long they're able to milk that particular cow. Big problem when it comes to this offering is expectations. Pixar has set the bar so insanely high that any movie that doesn't push the bar higher will be seen as a failure in the long term. Do I think that Luca is a failure? No, not really. It's good, but I don't expect Pixar to make good movies. I expect them to make great ones. I remember how I felt when I watched A Bug's Life. I remember how I felt when I watched WALL-E. I remember how I felt when I watched Up, and I remember how I felt when I watched Toy Story 3. I won't ever remember how Luca made me feel because it didn't make me feel anything at all. This is low stakes movie making where you know exactly how it's going to end and every single twist is telegraphed in the first 15 minutes. Stop motion animation movies like The Fantastic Mr. Fox and Kubo and the Two Strings are two perfect examples of non-Disney films that brought fresh and exciting ideas to the space. Luca is a perfect example of what happens when you become complacent and forget that the story is the most important part of storytelling. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the review or found it helpful, please consider subscribing. You can also like and share the video since that tells YouTube that it's worth promoting. Sound off down in the comments, let me know what you think of Luca, and I'll see you next Wednesday at 9 a.m.